good day, owners, and welcome to this special installment, preseason football talk with the commish. Today I'm going to go over the keeper role in our league and what it means to you, and we'll also rate how your keeper did last year, and hopefully this year, the teams who didn't do so hot, mine's included, will get some improvement from their players this year in their keeper format. So with our keeper, you're allowed to keep one player that was on your roster at the end of the season, and that player will be considered the first round of the draft, basically. Keeps it that, and then we'll start the draft after those players are in. You have until 1 hour prior to the commencement of the draft to lock that player in yourself. If you fail to do so, ESPN will pick what they think is the highest ranked player on your team, and they will lock that person into place. Once again, that player had to be on your roster at the end of the regular season, and we've done this a few years, so we have a thing how to do it. You can do it off of your mobile app. I did look at that, so I was able to do it off my iPad and the phone, and also on your desktop through the ESPN Fantasy Football website. So without further ado, we will break down how you did with your keepers last year and how they ranked in the league overall. Remember, we are a PPR league, so based on PPR scores, our number one keeper was Todd Gurley II. He came in fourth overall place and third overall for the running backs. Todd Gurley is the running back for Los Angeles Rams and currently sits on Jethro's Heroes team. And I was on the ESPN site this afternoon and saw that Todd Gurley has been chosen as his keeper again for this year. So good pick for him. It was the best one we had last year. Todd Gurley had 256 carries for 1,251 yards. He scored 17 rushing touchdowns. He also had 580 yards receiving. For 4 touchdowns as well. He scored 393 fantasy football points in our PPR league, and he averaged 28.1 points per game. Like I said, he finished 4th overall and 3rd for the running backs. Our second best keeper last year was Alvin Kamara, who came in 6th overall in our league, and he was owned by Magic School Bus. Alvin Kamara is the running back for the New Orleans Saints, and he put up he had 194 carries for 883 yards for 14 rushing touchdowns. He also had 81 receptions for 709 yards for 4 passing touchdowns. He had 355 fantasy points, and he averaged 23.7 overall to finish 6th overall and 4th among the running backs. Our third best keeper was DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver for the Houston Texans. He finished the 8th overall, and DeAndre is on too tired. DeAndre had 115 receptions for 1,572 yards. He had 11 touchdowns. He scored 366 fantasy football points. He averaged 22.9 points per game. He finished as the number 1 wide receiver in the league and 8th overall in the NFL in fantasy points. In 4th place, another Houston Texans player, their quarterback, Deshaun Watson, finished 9th overall in the league, and Deshaun sits on Forsey's Fockers. Deshaun at the quarterback position passed for 4,165 yards, 26 touchdowns. He ran for 551 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns. He put up 402 fantasy football points, averaged 25.1 points per game. He finished 9th overall and number 4 among the quarterback positions. Rounding out our top 5 is Ezekiel Elliott, the running back for the Dallas Cowboys. He sits on Connolly's Crusaders. He finished 11th overall in the fantasy football rankings for the end of the year. Zeke put up 1,434 rushing yards, scored 6 touchdowns. He also had 567 receiving yards and scored 3 touchdowns that way. He put up 353 fantasy football points. He averaged 23.5 points per game. He was 5th among the running backs and, like we said, 11th overall. College Crusaders have a little bit of thinking to do, as Ezekiel Elliott is holding out of camp right now, waiting on a better contract. However, news on the street says last time that a running back sat out for Dallas, it was Emmitt Smith, and it took them 3 games before they got the contract in. So he played in the 3rd game, and Dallas lost their first 2 games. So they think with that track record, Jerry Jones will get this contract signed before the season starts. So Ezekiel should be good to go the first of the season. So he shouldn't be too much of a thought in picking as your keeper, Tyler. In the number 6 position, we have Antonio Brown, wide receiver now for Oakland Raiders. Last year, his points came through the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he is Huey's Hogs pick for a keeper last year. And I see Huey has him down this year as well, but that could change. We'll discuss here in a few minutes. Antonio Brown had 104 receptions for 1,297 yards, 15 touchdowns. He put up 355 fantasy points. He averaged 23.7 points per game. He finished 15th overall and was the 5th wide receiver. If you've been following the news, Antonio Brown's come out with a statement. There was a helmet change this year. Some players had an older helmet that looked like they give them a little bit more better visibility. However, it's not as concussion proof as the league would like. So they passed this law a few years ago, and they grandfathered in that anyone who had the helmet, they could use it up until this year, and then they had to wear the new helmet. 2 other standouts were Tom Brady and Drew Brees, and both of those players have switched to the new helmet. Antonio Brown is the only one that isn't, and so he has said if he can't wear his old helmet, which sounds like he brought his old helmet from Pittsburgh and actually spray painted it to look like an Oakland Raiders helmet. If he can't wear that, then he's going to retire from football. He just did sign a big contract with the Raiders, so we'll see how that goes. He did have arbitration yesterday to talk about getting this helmet to use, but since he would be the only one in the league and it is a concussion protocol thing, we don't think he has any kind of leg to stand on, so he will not get this helmet issue fixed. So just his attitude this year and everything else, his numbers sinking fast, so Huey's Hogs got a lot to think about before the season starts, and we'll see where Antonio Brown sits on opening day. And now, speaking of one of those players who just switched over to the new helmet, Tom Brady comes in at number 7. He finished 29th overall. Tom is the quarterback for New England Patriots, for those of you who have been dead for the last 20 years. And he is sitting on Gloria Stafford's team. And Tom put up 4,355 yards passing for 29 touchdowns last year, put up 11 interceptions. He rushed for 35 yards of rushing, which got him over 1,000 yards total for his career. And he put up 2 touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. He also had a catch last year for 6 yards. He put up 371 fantasy points, averaging 23.2 per game. Tom came in at 29th overall and 14th among the quarterbacks. At the 8th spot, we have my keeper, which was Keenan Allen, wide receiver for the LA Chargers. Keenan Allen is in the 8th position. He put up 97 receptions for 1,196 yards, 75 yards of rushing. He had 6 touchdowns. He scored 269 fantasy points. He averaged 16.8 points per game. He ranked 37th overall, and he was 12th among wide receivers. And he failed me dearly in my playoff run in my last games of the playoffs. So not a big fan of him this year. In the number 9 spot, we have David Johnson, running back, Arizona Cardinals. He finished 39th overall. David put up 940 rushing yards, 446 yards with 50 receptions and 10 touchdowns. He put up 239 fantasy points. He averaged 14.9 points per game. David Johnson was also Steel Curtain's keeper last year, the year before, and he got injured in the first quarter of the game, I believe, and was out for the season. So he finished 9th overall this year in the running back position. In the number 10 position, the owner's love-hate relationship with this player. Odell Beckham Jr. for the Acadian Assassins. Odell came in 45th overall, and that was with the Giants. He was very disgruntled at the Giants offense. He was not a big fan like I am. Not a big fan of Eli Manning. So Odell had 77 receptions for 1,052 yards. He had 6 touchdowns. He put up 261 fantasy football points. He averaged 21.8 points per game, which isn't that bad. He was out for a bit again with some injury, I do believe. He also threw 2 touchdowns as well. He ranked 15th among the wide receivers, 45th overall. He has since left the Giants and now sits with the Cleveland Browns. And I think the relationship as a keeper with the Acadian Assassins is probably coming to an end this season as well. So keep your eyes posted on the keeper coming out of the Acadian Assassins this year, as it will probably not be Odell Beckham Jr. In the 11th spot for the keeper, finishing 402nd overall, and coming off the team that actually went to win this year's 2018 championship, was Mac Daddy's Madhouse's Devonta Freeman. Devonta's a running back for the Atlanta Falcons, and he only put up 68 yards rushing this year. He had 23 yards receiving, no touchdowns, a total of 12 fantasy football points. He was taken out of the game in Game 2 with an injury and did not return for the rest of the season. So he finished 102nd overall, and he's ranked 105th out of the running backs. This year's keeper coming out of that team right now is posted as Drew Brees. He does have Kareem Hunt sitting on his bench. However, smartly, Kareem Hunt will not see a game until week 10 of the NFL season due to kicking that girl at the hotel last year. So his suspension will be 8 games. They have a bye week. He'll show up in week 10. Pretty much useless to anybody in our league at that point. In last place, we have Luke-Ass Kickers keeper Le'Veon Bell, who sat out the entire season waiting on a contract in Pittsburgh, never received it, and as you can see in the image, he's now a New York Jet, so we'll see what he does there. We'll see if Luke-Ass is going to keep him. He put up no points, didn't rank in anything, dead last. So we'll see. Conley should keep an eye on this and hope Ezekiel Elliott doesn't turn into another Le'Veon Bell, but I just think Bill just was an idiot last year and sat out the entire season, and he'll probably suck in New York for the Jets as well. We'll see what happens there. Anyway, we'll see what play Luke-Ass Kickers makes for a keeper this year. So that is a look at our keepers this year. To rehash them in reverse order, the worst was Le'Veon Bell. Devonta Freeman with an injury came in at 11th. Odell Beckham Jr. 10th. David Johnson 9th. Keenan Allen 8th. Tom Brady 7th. Antonio Brown 6th. Ezekiel Elliott 5th. Deshaun Watson 4th. DeAndre Hopkins 3. Alvin Kamara 2. Todd Gurley the second, number 1 in our keepers. So if you didn't make the top 6, then you were in the bottom half of our keepers. We need to do a better job, myself included, to do better with our keepers this year. That's it for me on this one, on the keeper special. Remember, you have to pick a keeper 1 hour prior to the draft, or ESPN will manually or physically lock in a player of their choice that they feel would be the most powerful player on your team at that time. That's it for me now. I'll probably get another update later in the week, as these little beauties with no video only take me about 40 minutes to put together, whereas the other ones take me 4 hours. So we'll talk to you later. We'll update you with draft night, and take care, and start doing your research on your keepers.